Well, welcome everyone to today's webinar on the AI in Treasury and Finance survey results. This is Brian from Strategic Treasurer, and we're pleased you could join us as we discuss the key findings from these survey results. Our speaker for today is Craig Jeffery, founder and managing partner of Strategic Treasurer. Welcome, Craig, and then I'll turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you, Brian, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. We know there's many things you can do on any given day, and so we're glad when you can join us to cover information, insights, or perspectives. And this one is on a survey. So first, I'd like to thank everyone who took the survey. This is very helpful to have people participate. And I encourage those of you who just want to hear results but don't take the survey to go ahead and take surveys. I think you'll find it useful just to see the questions as you go through them. It helps us get the numbers up there to make them more significant, and that allows us to cut the data in different ways. So for everyone who hasn't done it, please do that next time. For everyone who has taken a survey or takes our surveys, thank you so much. So what are we going to cover today? We've got the agenda laid out in front of us. Tell you a few stats about the survey. That'll be quick. Then we'll look at AI tools. AI tools will look at what's growing. We'll look at business and personal use of AI tools. These are from the survey results. We'll talk about generative and agentic AI, the making or generative, and the doing, the agentic or agents for AI. What's happening and how is adoption coming? What are people doing and playing with during their time at work or time at home? And on the in-system deployment, what's current and planned? And by in-system development, we mean if you're using a tool, an ERP, a treasury system, a payment hub, are you using what's available within the system, within the platform, and what's happening on the do-it-yourself side? Like if your IT group is setting up tools, setting up large language models to capture data and happening. So in-system deployment is probably the biggest focus there. And the impact on staffing, we'll look at what's expected, what's going to be new, how is that going to create changes? Is there going to be less work, less tasks? How is that going to impact organizations? And this is the perspective of you and your peers. So we'll cover that. On the key takeaways, there's 4 things I'll just leave you with. North Star, learning, safety, and expanding on the headlines, but we'll get into that when we get to that slide. So let's get into it and cover what's gone out about the survey. So about 250 or 250 people took the survey. That was excellent. This is our second year of research. We started with a rapid research survey, which is a tiny baby survey with not many questions. And this year we expanded it to about 50 questions. Depends on how you answered. You might answer 40 questions or 35, but there's a total of 50 questions, and it was run over a 5-week period. And the breakout for revenue is shown below. So you can see half the companies were $1 billion or more in revenue, and then by mathematical surety, it was 50% were below $1 billion in annual turnover or sales. So that's the survey. We ran it and compiled the information. The categories of AI, this is useful. I think most of you are probably familiar with these. Some may not, but I think we should do some definitions here, just so when we're talking about the terms, nobody's lost. And so you can see how we think about those and categorize those. So these are all AI, artificial intelligence. Most people group them this way. You can find others who leave machine learning outside that group, but the majority, from what we can tell, include it. We do as well. So machine learning or pattern detection, generative AI, things that create, things that make. If we look at agentic AI, think of agents that can perform functions, agents that can orchestrate activity. But let's start on the first column just for a few minutes. Machine learning learns from historical data to recognize patterns and improve over time. Most of us probably think about learning off of numbers, and that's certainly the case for things like cash forecasting You can learn off of what's standard and what's not standard. So anomalies are things that don't follow a pattern. And so those are used for quality control, for fraud prevention. So machine learning detects patterns. And so you're probably familiar, if you remember back, I can't remember what year it was, you would do interpolation, extrapolation. Interpolating would be determining what may come between two numbers or a range based on some other factors. Extrapolation would be extending something out to the future. There's different models, different vectors that can create that type of activity. And so machine learning is part of that, oftentimes focused with numbers. Generative AI, many people think ChatGPT or Bard or some of the other ones. This creates, it can create pictures, it can create code, it can create macros, you can create papers, whatever, you can create information from that. And it uses the information it's learned from, in its language model. So these AI programs are trained, and they might be trained on the whole internet, or they might be more specialized into treasury information or biomedical information, et cetera. And so it can be trained specifically or generally. And so what are people using it for? Policies, reports, maybe even summarizing the cash they have, how that's changed over time. Sometimes it's used to create things like what are our exposures for foreign exchange, pulling information from, let's say, underlying systems, combining that with what might exist from hedges you have in place. And then you train it to write properly, and then you can spit out policies, you can spit out reports more quickly. And I'm sure you played with, I'm mostly sure the vast majority of you have played with AI to create and answer certain questions, to create a summary report, as opposed to just doing a search. If you're used to doing a search, you ask a question, it gives you all the websites. If you use AI, it will search websites and then summarize that information in a way with weighting and what it believes are accurate. So that'll create. Agentic AI has been much more of a buzzword lately. It is tools that act. And if you think about progression, agentic AI would follow robotic process automation. So bots are pre-programmed. I don't want to say dumb, but they're pre-programmed to do exactly what you say. If there's anything different, it stops and it bends or it breaks. Agentic AI or agents they have flexibility. It can pursue the goal. You can have it drop out and pass the information to a human. Bring the human into the loop when that exists. And so agents can also be set up to control other agents, or agents can interact with other agents from other systems. So you can have it interact and exchange information. So a couple examples we put down here would be detecting discrepancies, reconciling exceptions between accounts or across accounts without direct human input, or it could bring an alert to say, hey, we think this is a match. Can you check? Or here's 3 things we think it could be. Can you help us learn from that? And then when you teach it, it now has some additional knowledge about, in this case, reconciliation. So another example might be you have your level of cover for your hedge. You want to keep your exposure within a certain range. Now it's fallen outside that range. So you can make it so it would make, you're at a threshold to a trade. It could suggest a trade, or could identify different options that you have to bring your risk exposure in line with your risk framework, your risk tolerance, to keep it in that range, and can identify those items rather than I go to report, I see if it's a fit. If it's not, I do those steps. You could have agents go ahead and check to see where there might be some differences and suggest a solution, not just point out a problem. So predicting and pattern detection, creating or making, and then acting or doing, that would be machine learning, generative AI, and agentic AI. So a lot of words I said. Hopefully, for some you caught up on emails, others it might have been new material. So appreciate that. Now we move to the first section about AI tools. What's the familiarity? What's occurring? As you would expect, and this is not going to be the the dramatic reveal, is that familiarity has grown across the board with AI, generative AI, the potential application of Gen AI in Treasury and Finance. But let's just look at that briefly. So the top one here, if we look across the top, we see 25% were very familiar, 33% were very familiar this past year. So an 8-point increase. So you can see that there's growth in familiarity. Same thing with generative AI. 14% were very familiar a year and a little bit ago, and then a few months ago, 24% indicate very familiar with generative AI. Usually people have played with it, toyed with it, or spent some time with it. So the familiarity is growing. And then the potential application, which was the lowest, and is still the lowest, the potential application in Treasury and Finance is how can I say this? If you think it's a neat tool, but you can't think of an application in Treasury or in Finance, is it just a fun tool? Is it like a game? And so the development is I'm becoming more familiar with AI, Gen AI, agentic AI. Now I start to see how that could apply in different situations. And then I can see, individual, tasks or activities, and then rolled up to more and more functionality within the group. So we see this potential application of Gen AI in Treasury and Finance going from 7% to 15%. It's an 8-point jump. That's not revolutionary. It's a little more than doubling. Yeah, that's still pretty significant. So we're pretty pleased to see more people, and the majority, 70%, are somewhat familiar, very familiar with the potential application of Gen AI in Treasury and Finance. So that's growing. We'd expect that to grow more in the next year. But that's the familiarity with some of the AI tools. So how familiar are you with that? It's followed up by what are you using and how has that use changed? So let's look at this for a moment. Do you use it personally? 2024 is the blue and 2025 is the green. So we had a 16-point jump from use personally. I use it for self-learning, other personal uses, just over half to a significant majority. I hope that will grow, at least everybody on this call, that you will at least use it personally, at least experiment with it personally, in the next month or so, just to learn, see how it works, how it can function, and how it fits. So there's a question, does AI there reflect machine learning? I think I missed where that question was, might have been on the previous slide. It's really how the person interpreted it, Cal. So it's hard to say exactly if it's a personal view of the question, but good question. So thank you. For use for work, went from a third to half. Use it for Treasury work, research, or analysis. That's a good bump as well. So 17-point off a lower base. So by this point, more than the majority are using it for work at some level. Might be piloting it, might be using it very discreetly, but it is being used for work by the majority of organizations now. Testing it, you evaluate it for work applications, but have not implemented it. That bumped up 9 points, so a little over a third are testing. And this is the way to learn. Use it personally, start testing it for certain functions. You can run parallel. You can look at this activity, so 37%. So this may look like in a year, that doesn't seem like that much growth. Perhaps that's what that looks like. But as we look at different technology, this is a nice, solid, sizable growth pattern for using AI tools compared to other tech. It usually takes a while for that to be adopted. That will bring us to poll question slide number 1, which has 2 questions. The use of AI. I am using AI tools personally. I am using AI tools for business. So go ahead and answer both of those and submit it. And we'll have another announcement in the chat box. So Brian, if you would post the workshop message or link in the chat box, that would be good for people to see. I'll say a few things for that before I go over the responses. So in the chat box, it says register for the AI Initiatives Workshop. This is a free workshop we're doing in conjunction with some other partners. It's a 3-hour workshop. Come for what you can. Go ahead and register. It is coming up soon. We really look forward to having you join. So feel free to click on that, register. You can come to all of it. That's great. You can come to part of it. That's fine. We'll go in more depth, show more things than we can do in an hour webinar. So we'll go through quite a bit. We have some partners there. It will be fun. It's our first workshop that we're doing. You're not going to be put on camera. Nobody's going to be challenged to answer questions directly, but we'll go through a lot of material. So this should be great fun. We really hope you can join us for that. So maybe 100 of you will sign up for that there just now. But our first poll response is up. So 77% are using AI tools personally, and we are at 70%. So you are either 10% better, or if that means better, or it's just a few more months and that's the general adoption. So I would say this is fairly close. And if you would like to see these poll results, I'll just say 50 people type the word AI workshop or I'm in for the AI workshop. Just either way, you don't have to go if you say I'm in, or if you go to AI workshop, but we'd love to have everyone attend, and feel free to share that link with your team. That would be encouraging to us. So 3/4 are using AI tools, and for business, interesting. Yes, for real work, 29%, and we're at 50% for the main, and then piloting or experimenting, which could be a potential answer to 45%, and then no is 26%. So 74% are piloting or experimenting and using it for real work. Pretty interesting to see that for this group. So really appreciate you responding to that. All right. So how is AI growing? You can see the headline. It says the vast majority see future impact as significant or transformational. And the reason we ask that question is, who thinks the role of AI will be significant or transformational? Not that there's going to be a minor impact or a moderate impact, but very significant or transformational. Transformational means it will change much of what's being done. It won't just be, I can do this manual task in an automated manner now. It can change how jobs are structured, what makes up a job, whether it's jobs go away, or whether it's jobs are changed dramatically because AI will help make all that information work and work better. 3/4 of you, 3/4 of us believe it will be significant or transformational. When I see that, that seems like we're past the stage of there's a lot of hype for most people. If you go back 2 years, like we started playing stuff and said, this is neat. And then it was like, how does this work in Treasury? It seems to me, and I'm interpreting this as most people are saying, there's enough powerful things that it can do that can impact our work, or is impacting our work significantly. And it's getting better so much more rapidly than what other tech has been doing, that we see the power of it can be transformational or significantly impactful within finance. It's not going to make our lunch, but it will save us significant time. It's a significantly powerful tool that we can use to leverage to solve some of the challenging issues that exist. So that's where we stand on that 75%. So generative AI, the ability to create, and thank you for everybody who typed AI workshop into the chat box. I think I said 50, and so we've already run over that. Should have said 150, but we have enough, so that's great. So what are the uses for generative AI? So here are four slides. Blue is 2024. Green is this year. So almost identical on identifying risks and evaluating exposures. Fairly mature, almost 2/3 both years. I would consider 1% change negligible or immaterial. So identifying risk and evaluating exposures. A significant majority, a notable majority, let's say, believes that generative AI can help us identify risk and evaluate exposures. Could be counterparty, be FX, could be certain activity coming due. Most of you think that's the case. Evaluating counterparty exposures using public information. It was a majority, and it's a little bit more of a majority. 52 to 57% believe that you can monitor counterparty exposures using public information, whether that's public data for public companies, whether that's chat and logs where you can monitor chat that sometimes can indicate distress, or whatever else could be done. Those are what people may be thinking in their heads when they say there's an opportunity. So both of those are in the majority, have been in the majorities since we started doing this survey. On the FX side, evaluating FX exposures and recommending actions, we went from 40 to 52%, a 12-point jump, pretty significant. We crossed the threshold. The majority believe that generative AI can help in evaluating FX exposures and recommending actions. Now, there's long been a number of tools that help if you have your exposures captured, have a very good way of identifying, here are some options to reduce those exposures or bring those exposures in line with your risk appetite. In other words, what risk you want to have. And then there's certainly tools that have been used to pull out, particularly from accounting systems or ERP platforms, where there might be FX activity, so that it gets summarized accurately rather than relying on people. So now it's just over the majority believe that Gen AI can help with identifying that information and pulling it together, collating it, summarizing it, and providing recommended actions to get your risks in line with your risk appetite. On the investment side, still under half. It was about a third last year of organizations said, we think that Gen AI can help evaluating and recommending investment options. So that's shot up to 4 out of 9 or 44%. So that 8-point jump is still healthy. We do see artificial intelligence and machine learning being dropped in to some different portals, helping the process. So 4 out of 9 of your peers believe that the use for Gen AI will be quite helpful. All right, let's move to our second full question. We are rolling, we're going fast. The question is a single question about your view on AI. And this is the hype to promise. My view on AI is that there is much promise, much hype, some promise, some hype, and you can select all that apply. So maybe you think there's 2 that go together, 3 that go together. Actually, there's promise and hype. I don't think you can say much and some. That would be duplicative, but that's my interpretation. Go ahead and select those and enter them. We'll do a little discursus. If Brian, if you can also put the workshop link in there as well. So we have enough responses, which is great. So follow Strategic Treasurer on LinkedIn. There's a link there. If you're not already following us on LinkedIn, that would be great. He will put up a link that'll say Strategic Treasurer, which is to follow me. I'd rather connect with you. If you submit a submission to connect, I'll follow through and connect. If you just want to follow, that's fine too. We'll put those up for you as well. And just another plug for the Register for the AI Initiatives workshop. That would be great. All right, so I think we'll know what your fellow webinar attendees are thinking about AI. So go ahead and submit your answer. Much promise versus some promise. 58 versus 33%. Okay, this is positive. I guess if you thought it was all hype, you wouldn't be on this webinar. So we said much versus some. So 58 to 33, a 25-point gap. We didn't say no promise. But on the hype side, we say much hype, 47% versus some hype, 11. So 36-point gap there. So there's certainly a bit on the hype side, which is fun to see. In the chat box, I would be interested um, if you believe that hype has gotten more about it, or the promise has gotten more. Type hype, like it's become more hyped. Like that's the biggest significant thing, or the promise seems to be becoming more real. So type hype or promise if you like. And I just want to see what's coming there. I wish I could make Brian count all those up. And there's a lot. So this is really fun. This is real-time feedback. And don't you like seeing that? And so I'll tie that back to, you like seeing this. Wouldn't you like to take the surveys we send out? All right, I'll stop asking. I have no idea what the total is, but it looks like there's quite a bit of both. I would say promise looks slightly higher, but we'll have Brian do the final count for that. So definitely hype and promise. And then we always like to see those that use it more, if they think there's more promise versus those that use it less. Do they think there's more hype? And is that changing over time? I know my views have shifted to more promise over time as quickly as they develop. We're using a number of areas in our organization, a lot of testing for sure. So I guess I'll leave that hanging out there like that. Normally I do a webinar with other people, and so there's some dialogue and there's back and forth, but you just have to listen to me. So there we go. Thanks for taking that poll. Agentic AI, that just sounds, interesting. Agentic agent, artificial intelligence that does things. And so I made the comparison earlier between bots, like robotic process automation, and agents. And so if you ever touch tone phone somewhere and it sends you through that tree and it says hit this to go back to the main option, you probably find yourself yelling agent representative really quickly because like you couldn't get your question answered with that. And then if you use some of the bots on websites that are using AI, you may still quickly be asking for an agent, but sometimes they do a really good job of answering what you're getting at really quickly, faster than the human agent. A human agent could type or talk, and so there's certainly a change there. But agents are the smarter method of, smarter bot, right? It can solve things, it can learn from them, as opposed to once you learn and you're using bots, you have to tell the bot, now look at these particular items. The agents can come out and pull a person into play in the discussion when it makes sense. So let's look at agentic AI. That's become a lot more popular in the last year compared to Gen AI was much more discussed during the first survey. So this question was 2025 only. A third, just under a third, have experimented with agentic AI. So that's more than I just used it once, but I've experimented with it, would be our assumption. The middle one, 2 out of 9, 22%, right in there you have, we are using agentic AI at work in one or more areas. That's a pretty nice number. So 2 out of 9 companies are using it in one or more areas. And so I do expect that to be different now. I do expect it to change in the next year. So it may not be used in Treasury, but in one or more areas. If we slide over one more, we are using agentic AI within my department. And most of the departments that took this were certainly in finance, and I'll say Treasury was well represented. So that's just under 1 out of 5 are using agentic AI within my department. So they've done some testing, they're using it. We didn't ask how much, how significant is it, but about 1 in 5 are using that. That's probably 1 in 5 today as more organizations have adopted it. we've had far more conversations, far more projects, and far more activity around AI, and the use of agentic AI is certainly one element that's growing. So that's a key area, key issue, and so you can see those numbers. But what are the challenges that are being addressed by AI? So we'll look at this now. So we've got 2 years. What are the specific areas? We asked how people are using it, or where do you expect AI to, what issues or challenges you hope it to solve? So cash forecasting accuracy, the top one, the most in 2024, still the most in 2025. An 11-point jump. So 2/3 to 3/4 of organizations expect specific challenges can be addressed by AI with cash forecasting accuracy. That is very significant. And Brian gave the count count on the hype versus promise. It was 2-to-1, promise over hype. So yeah, two-thirds think there's promise has grown more than hype has grown. So so interesting to see where that is. I wonder what next year will look like there. The hype promise. We gotta come up with a good name for the hype promise hypometer or something like that. We can come up with some name that shows how something changes over time. You know, especially as it develops. Does it develop and go flat and stays in the hype land, or does it transition from too much hype to delivering on its promises? All right, moving down to risk management, a 7-point jump from 24 to 25. It will be, it's notable that it's, you know, almost 2/3 think that risk management will be very much helped and addressed by AI. And that makes sense. I think, you know, considering that you can use it to look at internal data in your systems, if your systems are set up so they can be queried. It can also look at external data for counterparties or risks, so it can combine those two. So it gives you the ability to do more of those functions fairly rapidly, still in a testing phase earlier. So that makes sense to me that that's growing in expectations. And there might be other reasons why more people selected it, but you know, 7-point jump, just good progress, still over half. The strategic decision-making analysis moved up 12 points. I don't really have any comments on why that would be the case. I think it's dangerous to say, what should we do, right? Ask the machine, and what should we do, or which areas of business should we go into, without more thought about the business flow, et cetera. But there might be strategic analysis where it's better at pulling information to see what's happened than you get from maybe traditional reports. Maybe it's able to pull more information for you. I don't have a good answer for that. I do find it's interesting that it's moved from 1/3 to 4 out of 9. If anybody has a great reason why that would be super important, feel free to type in the chat box. That would help me as I thought about that. I didn't come up with much, you know, to explain that. On the manual reconciliation task, 6-point jump from 1/4 to 1/3. This has been talked about far more of late. The ability to have this process where it can learn how you reconcile or identify things, and have an iterative process and be able to negotiate with other systems. There are certain areas of AI that are being leveraged very significantly and effectively here. So that's moved up as well, still 1/3, so plenty of room to grow. Yeah, so we'll move on. If you had the ability in your company to build your own, you know, large language model, train it on your own data, protect it from external areas, and you have the time to do that, that is great if you're doing that. It is our view that there's far greater opportunity to use AI when it comes baked into a system or can be turned on from within a system. If your bank or if your fintech provider adds that capability into the system, then you have a much greater ability to use it. because it's there. It stays within certain guidelines. Just like if you're on LinkedIn, it's like, it says AI to improve your response. Right now that it's in there, oh, okay, I can just use it versus I'm going to type a response in Copilot or ChatGPT and then paste it into the system. When it gets embedded in a system, it's a lot more easy. It's a lot easier to use, which I think is perfectly logical. But what have we seen? Treasury aggregators or payment hubs on the left from 4 out of 9 to 5 out of 9, essentially. So a 10-point jump. They're using it or planning to use AI within those systems. So Treasury aggregators pulling information in, you can detect anomalies or gaps, and payment hubs, you're sending out payments, you can detect something that doesn't fit the pattern, either something you define or it's learning behavior or activity. And so it spots payments made at different hours, the rate of payment speed or payment beneficiary has changed, and now there's a lot of money coming out. So that is number one, both years, 44 to 54%. Excel, if you look at some of the capabilities built in, like I think it's running Copilot within Excel for the most part, we went from 24 to 44%. That 20-point jump. And when you see some of the options, you're like, this is very helpful. Like we always liked it when it would start pre-filling. If you go January, February, and it goes March, April, May, all the way to the end of the year. So it recognizes, it's long recognized patterns and done some of those helpful activities. And now you've got more power and capabilities within the spreadsheet tool. ERP is just about doubled from 20 to 40%. You like that? And most people have moved or are moving, to SAP S/4HANA from R3, or they're moving to Oracle Cloud. They're moving to a new platform, not really an upgrade, more of a whole new implementation, but onto a platform that supports those kind of tools, that kind of functionality more natively within the system. So that has about doubled. That fits well. I think everybody that moves to the newer platforms, there's going to be much more opportunity there. On the TMS side, a big jump, 21 points. That just edges out Excel. And so we see, just about half have a use or planned use. And so that requires, if you have one, you either know that your vendor, your supplier, your partner has added that functionality in and made it available, or you can turn it on and can use it or expect them to do so. And so those are great questions to ask your fintech partners and your banks. What are you doing with AI? What's becoming available? When will we be able to play with it and test it? When will it be available for functionality? Because if it is more promise than hype, then it is a very powerful tool. When can we get access to a more powerful tool? How can we do that effectively and manage it? So these are all great questions that come about as we look at this flow and this change among your peers in their outlook on artificial intelligence, its use and practicality. So where is your organization in the preparation use of AI? Are you a leader in the top 10%? Are you a follower? That next 2 deciles down? Are you in the middle? The next several deciles down? From 31 to 59%. If you're in the bottom 40%, below half, are you a laggard? Just go identify what you can as best as you can. Now think in your heads, where is everybody going to show up? Okay, the bottom 40%, 20%. So I don't know if anybody had paid attention to Lake Wobegon. It's a TV show. I don't know if it's still on, but I found I was going at least 10 years ago still, where all the children were above average. But this can certainly make sense. If we have 31%, we have 41% in the top 30% here, but you're attending a webinar on AI survey results. So I think that makes you attentive, a geek, whatever favorable term you have for that. The bottom, the laggard, 40%, 20% identified your companies in that category. So This seems pretty reasonable. And if you the middle, the 30% identify the middle from 31 to 59%, a little bit more identifying themselves in the middle than proportional there. So yeah, it's a good distribution. I like it. I appreciate it. All right. So what's the expected AI impact on staffing? Asking for a friend. What will AI do to staffing? I'm going to go over the results, and also I'm going to share some of the things I think about. I mean, AI will, without a doubt in my mind, maybe a doubt in your mind, will change many of the individual tasks, subtasks, tasks, and even functions. And therefore, it will change jobs. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm doing these 8 major tasks, major functions, and there's tasks under those. I think it'll impact almost all those or all of those. It won't do away with everyone for most people. There are some things where the vast majority of what's being done today will be able to be done through AI that will still need to be guided, trained, monitored. But depending on what you're doing, there will be more or less change, radical change, moderate change. And so since that is, let's say that's an assumption, what does that mean we need to do? Do we just get scared, or do we say, how do we leverage the tools so that we stay ahead and do the things that we like to do as the individual tasks may shift due to what the computer is doing, what the AI agent is doing, what the Gen AI function is performing? How are you governing that? So I think there's great opportunity for better functions, better tasks, more enjoyable work, but there is definitely going to be disruption that occurs. And if you're passive, the disruption is going to be along the lines of, you keep moving my cheese. And I think the perspective is you want to stay up with it. So when changes are coming, you're adapting, you're focused on the particular area. Lee put a great point. Treasury's already thinly staffed, and that is a good thing for Treasury. And there's many things that Treasury isn't doing in many companies that they should be doing, but they're very thinly staffed.
What do we see from the results here? Increased staffing levels, Treasury, 6%, 5% increase for finance. So that's a very small percentage of you who believe that AI will have an impact, that staffing levels will increase over time. Those are the optimists. The decreased staffing levels is Treasury, 31%. Think there'll be a decrease, and 48% think overall finance will decrease. There's quite a few more people in overall finance, and we've seen impacts in areas like audit from external third-party firms, where we've seen significant impacts on certain functions and then having to move and do jobs in other areas. So that's the balance between those. So Treasury on the net basis, you take the 31 less the 6, there's a 25%, a quarter of you believe Treasury functions will decrease. So there you go. On the finance side, it's 43% believe they'll be decreased. That's the 48% less the 5%. And allowing organizations to maintain staffing levels, roughly two thirds for Treasury. There's a lot more functions that can be performed, that need to be performed. One of the biggest ones that comes up has to do with forecasting. Big need for more forecasting. People would do more. They should do more. They're expected to be more accurate, to run more models. This is a perennial feedback, and so the promise there on forecasting helps the growth on payment security, particularly if Treasury is the superintendent of payments, overseeing all payments, not doing all payments. And as superintendent of payments, they would also be superintendent of payment security. So certainly lots of areas to go into. I think that's worthy of a broader discussion, either individually or perhaps a webinar. What will Treasury look like in the future? What are the new things that are going to happen? And what are some of the tasks that are going to diminish? I think that'll help us guide our thinking. But that's what the survey results had. So thanks for going through the details. There is a survey report you can download as well. Hopefully you have it. Brian can post that in the chat box. What are some of the key takeaways? So we have a few minutes to talk through these elements. The North Star. I started hearing people talk about the North Star. What's your guiding light or direction, right? You want to be in the right direction and moving in there. So what's the priority or priorities that your organization has? Is it related to efficiency foremost? Is that second or third? Is it related to better insight, using and leveraging data? Is it related to control and protection? Is it expanding the business and analyzing things properly? So identify those priorities of your organization is so essential, because if you're going to test or use or implement artificial intelligence, the more you fit that into the key directions of your organization, the better success you'll have. Another aspect is you need to know and understand. And I don't mean to be shrill about that, but team knowledge is needed. You can't have one person who's like, I'm the master of ChatGPT. There needs to be a leveling up of knowledge across the organization. And so make sure that there's time for people to do that. Pay the $20 a month for people to have a more fully capable system. Make sure it's done in a safe way and in compliance with your organization. But increasing team knowledge is needed. One way to do that is to play with some tools, attend the AI workshop. I'm sure that'll magically appear in the box. But make sure that the team knowledge is increasing and that you're talking about this and you have a list of here's priorities for using AI to help with this function or this task. And then having a roadmap for AI use and rules for navigation. There might be a company-wide roadmap or guidelines. Don't expose this data, do this or do that. But there should be we're trying to get here in Treasury or finance. Here are the waypoints. We want to do this first, and then this. And your end state doesn't have to be, the space trilogy or whatever. It doesn't have to be so far afield, but it should be something that your team can look at and say, we want to get there, but here's some of the initial steps. We're crawling, walking, running, and sprinting. So that's the aspect for the North Star. On the focus on learning, build a list of use cases. Your team should have a list of use cases. We've gone through that in our organization. Like, what would you like to do with AI? What is the function? Where is the value? And then you put what's expected, what would be involved, how hard is it? And you can prioritize it to see what's the expected payoff. And will that change as the systems and tools get better? So starting with a list will be useful, and that can be adapted over time. And then the second part is focus on learning components. You don't have to try to make your AI tool solve the thorniest problem all at once. You can have it focus on components. And if you use agents, you can have it solve tiny elements of the task. And then you can coordinate them together, orchestrate that activity through other agents so they can run through the processes, identify when there's a problem, it won't break it, it just pulls a human involved in it. And the other part is making sure the overall team understands the potential. I know we have the hype and promise, I think it was hype and promise in the chat box, but make sure we understand the potential, the process, and the projects that may exist so that there's a more realistic view. Even if you think it's extreme hype, I think we all know that there's things that it can do, and so maybe that's much more modest approach and tack that you take on that. And so here's what our list is. Here's the order. Here's where we see the priorities. Here's what we're learning, testing, and then moving to implementation. Before we cover the last two, just taking a minute to point people to the chat box. There's the AI and Treasury and Finance Survey Report. Please download that, share that. Feel free to share that with your team. Let them download the information as well. And then the AI Initiatives Workshop. Please go ahead and register for that. Even if you can only attend an hour or two, it's potential 3 hours. We'll cover a lot of things. We will have fun. There'll be a lot of learning, a lot of good information. So please join us for that, for whatever you can of that. Share it with your team as well. So there we go. For safety, you have to protect your data. Your IT group will be good about protecting your data, so you're not training public AI on your company specific data, confidential data. You don't want that information learned and out in the ether. So make sure you know how to do that and can do that. So protecting your data is vital and important. And so that's worthy of talking to your team to make sure that accomplishes. We encourage the starting small and expanding. Start with small snack size activities and get functionality from them, and you can cobble them together, put them together, and use agents to pull them together, and then have a better, more robust process because you have these small agents. It's all orchestrated. It does those functions. And then the idea of running parallel, running pilots, you can see what the AI agents are doing or the Gen AI is accomplishing. Is it right? Do we need to retrain it? As you train it, it gets smarter, faster than an intern. But train it, you must. And then this idea of partnering with IT. They will want business use cases. They want people from the business areas to do that. Leverage that interest and go ahead and do that. And then finally, our last pillar here, our last takeaway is learn and expand. And you can see how important learning is because we have learning in the second pillar. We also have it in the third pillar. And so determine what worked and what can be improved. You've done something, it worked. You did something, it worked okay. You did something, it failed. What worked? What needs to be changed? What needs to be dropped? Why did that work? Was it relying on terrible data? Was it a different process? How did that go? And share your learning with your internal team in Treasury. And if you're in Treasury, with the broader finance area to see what else comes to mind. That will generate excitement, interest, and ideas to do better. And then you can grow adoption most effectively by building on any successes you have. It's doing this. This works well. We've put some use cases that were just really terrible activities. And, well, I'll give a use case. One is we use different images in our news site, ctmfile.com. And you license those, you put those out, and then sometimes the licensing process fails in a way that the people that own those search the web and find and say, oh, this one, you didn't license this, pay us all this money. And then you have to go and find your license and do all that. So we set up a process that it would take all the licenses, store them, save them, and be able to respond to any inquiry that happened. And it was such a pain, but it got rid of that whole pain. And so that's just one example. We have quite a few other examples, but the idea of you build on successes, you remove pain, you create efficiency, you capture and do better analytics, manage risks more cleanly, improve and identify potential issues sooner. Those are all significant successes. So that's the list of some takeaways. And I will say a couple things and bring Brian back online. So download the report, register for the AI Initiatives Workshop if you would. I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. Brian, I'll bring you back, and everyone, thank you for spending some of your time with us. I know it's just my voice most of the time, so thank you for bearing with me. Appreciate your time, your attention, especially for all those who took the survey. Double thanks to you.
Well, thank you, Craig, and thank you everyone for joining us today. The CTP and FP&A credits, today's webinar slides, and the recording of today's webinar will be sent to you within 5 business days. And as Craig mentioned, be sure to download the AI in Treasury and Finance Survey report by clicking the link in the chat box. Thank you, and we hope you have a good rest of the day.